let's get the show on the roll. So my name is Berit Johannesson, and I will be your host for today. At this point, I do want to go into the announcements that we have. Some really exciting things happening here at Zerion Software. The first is we have our Zerion Academy. So some of you may have already experienced Zerion Academy, but this has been launched about a month ago with some select groups or individuals so that we can have one location for everything that has to do with Zerion and learning about Zerion. So it'll have all the resources as well as additional courses. As time goes on, we'll have more and more of you in the Zerion Academy. Every time you participate in a Kickstart moving forward, you'll be added to Zerion Academy, as well as if you are a Zerion solution user, then you'll also have access. And if at any point you don't have access and you want access, just email either John or myself, and we're happy to put you in there and assign some courses to you. Additionally, you may have noticed that you received an email yesterday from Zerion Software, and it's talking about the rebranding of Zerion. So for those of you who have been using iForm Builder for a long time now, we're not getting rid of iForm Builder, we're not changing. We're just changing our name. So we're, instead of going by iForm Builder employees, instead we're Zerion employees. And this is partly because this past year we've released additional services underneath Zerion, so underneath the Zerion umbrella. And we have what we call as Zerion Solutions, which includes the data collection aspect, the data flow automation, as well as dashboards and reports, and PDF generator. So that's where we're much more than that data collector, so we decided to kind of rebrand ourselves a little bit with this. But for those of you who are using iForm Builder and don't foresee needing some of those other services, everything will stay the same for you. You won't notice anything different. Now, moving forward for 2017, we are going to have a lot of wonderful webinars and learning experiences for you, and all of these will be available via Zerion Academy, but also via the website under the webinar section. The first one that we'll have is our normal, or our really exciting webinar by Tony Ruth, which is just really what to expect for the upcoming year. So this one will be for 2017, and that will be on January 12th. On the 24th of January, we have Ryan Coleman presenting on launching beyond data collection, so really talking about some of those other services that Zerion offers. And then on February 1st, we'll have the form building basics. So for those of you getting started and are looking for some of those basic skills, that's a great session for you to join. When it comes to signing up for these sessions, John and I are going to be posting the links to all of the upcoming webinars hopefully by next week, so you'll have access to get those on your calendar and start scheduling around those. And let's not wait any further. At this point, John, let's start cooking with you.
Thanks very much, Barrett, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm really excited to present this one to you all. So during the year of 2016, I have seen a lot of really good work from our professional services team with the way they do their form building. One of the things I love about iForm Builder is how flexible the platform is and how you can find different ways to solve challenges around your data collection needs. And so what I did was I went through and asked the different people on our professional services team to share their favorite solution, or with the theme of cooking, their favorite recipe within iForm Builder that they wanted to present to you all as well. So to start things off, I just wanted to go ahead and do a quick meet the team, just in case you all are not familiar or have not interacted with each of these people at Zerion, but each one of the people on this list provided a solution to me to show to you all today. So we'll start with Penny's solution, and then we'll go to Barrett's, and then myself, Tack, and then we'll end with Ben's solution. And these are going to be the recipes that we're going over. So Penny's solution is going to focus on the aggregation of subform data, which is nested within another subform. Barrett's solution that she contributed focuses on using key values or labels for option lists when you're working with smart controls. I have a solution that focuses on client validation and using a label to to explain the validation, and because the label will be required, it will not allow you to submit the form. TAC contributed a recipe focusing on the ability to clear a date element, which is an element that you normally don't have the option of clearing, but she found a way to go ahead and do that. And then finally, Ben's solution is going to be on validating an empty text field. So we'll get started with Penny's recipe on aggregating subforms nested in another subform. And so the challenge here is that the built-in iForm Builder function for subform aggregation, in this case the sum, is difficult to use with a grandchild element, so that would be a third level subform. The syntax can be confusing because you're going to be combining both the syntax of the iForm Builder built-in function along with the tree structure necessary to access a subform element. And so the solution she came up with was a way to reference that tree structure, and she broke it down really nicely in a good example where you're going to be using the parent form's name and then subsequently thereafter the subform element name and index. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and jump into my device, and I wanted to just quickly show you what this looks like. So what we have here is on my parent form, I'm going to have a subform element named first level subform. When I enter this subform, there are going to be two elements. The first one is another subform, and then you're going to have this field for the aggregation result. Inside my second subform, which is now my grandchild form, it just asks you to input a number. So I can input a number here. And then you'll see that the field underneath is going to keep track of the aggregate sum of all the records. So as I add another row to my grandchild form, the aggregation result updates and it gives you the sum of all of these elements. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to jump into iForm Builder and show you the syntax for this. Okay. So what I have here is first I'll have Penny's parent form, then the child form, and then the grandchild form. Within the parent form, this is pretty straightforward. You're just going to have the data column name of first level subform. In the child form, this subform is called second level subform. So it's pretty simple. It follows that progression. And then in the third, the grandchild form, the name of the element, the data column name is my number. Now what you have to understand is that the iForm Builder built-in function requires two arguments or two values. The first value is going to be the data column name of the subform that you want to run the aggregation function in. When we're talking about 3 layers of depth, this would be that second subform element. The second value that it requires is the data column name of the element that we want to run the aggregation on. So again, in our example, it would be that element my number. Now where the difficulty and challenge comes into this solution is that for the subform data column name, because we're not just referencing a single element, but we're referencing a subform element, you have to use the tree structure here on line 4, where you start off with the parent form's name, followed by the data column name of the subform, and then you'll see the 2 brackets are going to be where we place our index value, and then finally within our subform, the data column name of the child subform. Inside of this index, you're going to have 2 options for what you place in here. If your subform has a one-to-one or a single relationship, you can just place the number 0 in here because you will only have one record, which will have the index of 0, which is the first one in your array. However, if you have a subform that has a multiple setting, so you can have a one-to-many relationship, you can't just always use 0 because what it will do is it will grab the value from that first record over and over again instead of the appropriate value for that subform record. So now what we have to do is we have to nest this tree structure inside of the index, where again we're going to mimic the parent form name followed by the data column name of the subform element followed by the word index. And so this is going to dynamically keep track of the position of the record you're currently in and use that appropriate element thereafter. So after going through that structure, let's go ahead and take a look at Penny's solution again. And we're going to go to the aggregation result. I'm going to scroll down here to our dynamic value. And I'm going to copy and paste this into my text editor so we can break it down a little bit further. Okay. Oops. So we start off with the iForm Builder math.sum. What I'm copying and pasting now is that first value, the subform data column name. My parent form's name was Penny. The subform data column name was first level subform. And this again correlates to this element on my parent form. Then inside for my index, I mimic that same structure. The name of the form, the data column name, and then the word index. Now after that, within this second form, I have to then include the data column name of this subform here, which is second level subform. And that is the end of that notation. So all of this text here is going to take the place of this first value, subform data column name. The second value, which is the data column name of the element we want to aggregate, is going to be this third layer of depth, this number field or number element named myNumber. And again, from what we have copy and pasted from Penny's solution, we see that data column name myNumber in single quotes after the comma. And so what we have here now at the end of this is you're going to have a really nice reference for both the tree structure as well as an implementation of using the iForm Builder built-in aggregation functions. So something I forgot to mention actually at the beginning of this webinar is that I will be including not only a PDF copy of these slides, but also a form package with all of these forms so that you can then import them into your own environments, play around with them, and take those as a template to use in your own projects. Barrett, did any questions pop up while we were going through Penny's solution?
Just one question, and it's about having going in a deeper level of your structure here. I mean, right now we're going from the parent form, child form, and then into a grandchild form. Well, what if it's actually, if you want to set this up in a grandchild form into a great-grandchild form, is that still possible?
It is. That would be a great question. So all you would have to do is continue to mimic this structure, but if this ended up being another subform, so you had one more layer of depth, you would then just need to create this as an index. You'd have your third level, so this would be something like third level subform. And then inside of here, you would need to take this index value and then you have to continue on with the tree structure. This would then be second, level subform dot index.
Great. I think that's really helpful to see that. The only other follow-up question with that is about the amount of text that you can actually have within your dynamic value. Would we be cutting it close here with creating such a long structure, and would it be possible to use page-level JavaScript instead?
Yeah, you absolutely could do this in page-level JavaScript, and I would actually say that it might be easier to not only write a function there because you would have the syntax highlighting, as well as you'd be able to use it in different elements as well if you needed to. But the other thing I do want to highlight is that in the editor, while the text area looks a little bit small here, you are able to drag and resize this. So you can add a fairly substantial amount of text to the dynamic value.
But we do have a limit, so we just people need to be aware of that limit.
Yeah, Barry, do you know what that limit is by any chance? I'm actually unaware.
I believe it's around like 100 characters.
Okay.
I know if you put in, once you start putting in smart controls here, once you get to that limit, it'll no longer allow you to put text in.
Okay. So if you're working with a longer string, then you can just, if you notice that it starts to get cut off, then we can move that up to page level JavaScript.
And that's also where I suggest having a shorter data column name if you know you are going to be using a longer string, because you do have to copy and paste it numerous times.
Definitely. That's a really good suggestion.
All right, well, that's it for now from this end.
Awesome. So we're going to move forward now, and actually, Barrett, we'll talk about the solution that you contributed to this webinar. And this is going to be focusing on using key values or labels for optionless smart controls. So to introduce this topic, I do want to note that in the old form builder, what we would be recommended to do was to use the index value of an option list to reference that position within the option list. But what ended up happening is with the new form builder and the new option list manager, you're actually able to rearrange options now using the sort order, which is a really great benefit, except that if you were using that index value to reference that position within the option list, rearranging the order of the options would then break any sort of smart controls that you had set up for that. So what Barrett has here is a really great recommendation to go ahead and use the ZC display value or ZC display key built-in functions for smart controls. This way, instead of doing comparisons and expressions using the index or the sort value, you're going to be using the key value or the label to do these comparisons. What this means is that even if you rearrange the order of the options, these smart controls are not going to be affected by that. And she did want to note that when you do these comparisons, especially an equality comparison, that the match has to be exact, that both the label and the key value are case sensitive. So now we're going to jump into her form. And so what I have here is I have a pick list of elevator manufacturers. And at the bottom, I have an option for other, right? So if I choose one of these values, that's fine. If I choose other, the condition value is set to look for that match and then show this field so I can enter in the name of a new manufacturer if necessary. I have a similar behavior set up here for a multi-select. So if I choose multiple options, again, because other was not selected, the text field underneath is not going to show up. However, if I choose other, it now shows. And what's nice about this multi-select setup is that even if other is the only option, it still shows. Or if there are other selections chosen with it, it will show as well. And so now let's go into the form builder and take a look at what we have. So first of all, within this pick list, let's take a look at our option list. I just wanted to go ahead and show you all the three different properties. So we have our sort order, our label, and our key value. And again, within this option list manager, I'm actually able to rearrange these options. So I can change, for example, these two, I can flip them if I make this one sort order 6 and this one 5. But then what you'll see here are the key values. And in this case, our key values are the label, but all lowercase and with an underscore instead of a space. Now, inside of my text field, that's going to be dynamically shown or hidden, I have the ZC display key underscore. And then what follows that is the data column name, elevator manufacturer, from my pick list, which is right here. After that, I'm going to use a double equal sign, which is your comparison operator for equality. And I'm going to match it to the word other, all lowercase. So if the key value for what was selected in the pick list, matches this string, lowercase other, then this field will be shown. For the multi-select, it works similarly, except that the condition value is going to be slightly different. So this is the same option list that I used. The only difference here is the data column name is elevator manufacturers, plural, with an S at the end. For this text field, the condition value is again going to check for the key value, ZC display key, elevator manufacturers. However, after that, I'm going to include this notation, the dot index of, and then in parentheses, the string I'm searching for, which is other. After that, I'm going to check to see if the number of indexes that have this as a part of its value is greater than or equal to 0. Basically, if this key value was selected in the multi-select, then it would return a number of 1. Or if that word was if that option was there multiple times and you selected it multiple times, that number would be greater than 1. But the main takeaway here is that if it is not selected, then that index would not be found, so it would be equal to 0. Okay? Barrett, any questions about this recipe?
The only question is if people have used index values in the past on an option list and now they want to go through and change those, what would be your recommendation on how to do that?
Sure. So one of the nice things about the new form builder is actually the different views that you have available for you. So one of the things I would recommend is actually using this table or this list view within Form Builder. And the way I got to that, I did it kind of quickly. At the top above the device here, you'll see both an icon for a mobile device as well as a list. And so by clicking on the list, I'm going to bring up this list view. And this is a really easy way, and I can show my condition values, to go through here and match up, instead of this saying elevator manufacturer equals 1 or equals 10 as the index value, I can then quickly change this to say ZC display key elevator manufacturer equals other. The other thing I would recommend is, like I did as I was showing this to you, is to open up the option list manager in a second tab actually. It's really useful because this way you can quickly go back and forth to copy and paste values instead of having to constantly have to reload pages.
Great. I feel like we're getting recipes within recipes. So this is perfect.
Absolutely. Good. Were there any other questions, Barrett, for this one?
No, that's it.
Awesome. So we'll continue moving on to my recipe, and this is going to be using a required label for client validation. So the challenge that I was facing was that, one, that the data collector does not give immediate feedback on failed client validation. So basically what that means is if you fill out a field incorrectly, you have to wait till you submit the field to see that, oh, I did this wrong. The other issue that I was running into is sometimes you get really complex client validation. I was running into issues where the fields were not updating properly, and then sometimes it would inappropriately invalidate the inputs that I had. So the solution I came up with was using a label that has to be set to be required. And since the label doesn't have an actual input, it will always be empty, which means it will always fail the validation. But the label can give you descriptive text that will let the data collector know what error they made. So it accomplishes both tasks of not allowing them to submit the record, as well as giving them immediate feedback. All right, going into this form, I'm going to load this up. And basically all I have here is a field where I have to enter the age of the adult this is supposed to be a number that is greater than or equal to 18. I'm just going to pick a number that is lower. When I press done, you'll see this label shows up underneath that says the age must be at least 18. Now, if I try to submit this form, it's going to give me my error because this label is required. And so it says the age, and again gives you the value of the age must be at least 18. Now, going into here, I just want to show you the label real quickly, where the condition value is that enter the age of the adult, which is the data column name for this element, is less than 18, right? So if this is less than 18, then this label will show up. What's tricky about this, though, is that if I go up here to the properties, I don't have a checkbox for the label to be required. So in order to get this behavior, you actually have to follow a sequence of steps in a very specific order, and I wanted to walk you through those steps. So the first thing you have to do is add a text element to your form. And I can go ahead and name this text element whatever I want. But because I have the element type set to text, I'm now able to set this to be required. Once I set this to be required, which you'll note by the red asterisk mark here, I'm then going to change this to a label where it continues to be required. However, there's, like I said earlier, no input you can give for a label. In the condition value, I would use the same condition in this case. And then what I would do is, for my label text, I would make this be the message that I want to display in the screen. I can save this. Oh, I wonder if I got timed out. I may have. Nope, looks good. Let me refresh this real quickly. While we're waiting for this to load, Barrett, were there any questions that have come up?
No, but we do have a poll that we didn't launch earlier, so I'll go ahead and launch that poll.
Perfect.
And this is just for us to gauge what type of users we have. So if everyone wouldn't mind just quickly responding to this poll, it's just asking, are you a current iForm Builder user? And the options are not yet, yes, but you're new, and the last one is yes, but I've been using it for a while. And hopefully we get 100% on our response rate, but so far it looks like we do have a large majority of people in the audience who've been using iForm Builder for a while, and it's split between some who are current iForm Builder users but are new, as well as some individuals who have yet to purchase iForm Builder. And I will say, for those of you who are new to iForm Builder, what John's done here is actually really assisted users who've been building forms for a while now on some of these best practices with building these different functionalities. Hopefully this isn't scaring anybody away. iForm Builder is a very flexible platform where you can really change the form outcome and really customize your forms through some of these different smart controls and recipes. So hopefully everyone, no matter the level you're at, you're finding this helpful and seeing the power behind it. And with that, John, I'll go ahead and give back presenter rights if you're ready.
Yep, I'm ready. So actually, when I had to refresh the page because I got timed out, it did not save my progress, but that's okay because repetition is always a good thing. So I can walk you through these steps once again. So first step is to make this text field. I'm going to set this to be required, change this to a label. I'm going to use my condition value, and actually what I will do this time is we'll use another condition. We'll say that this will show if the age is over 150. So if we think that the data collector entered an age that was too high. And the last thing I will do is change the label. I can save this. There we go. Let me go ahead and sync my device for the changes. Okay, and again, right now it is not shown. If I enter a number, 200, you'll see that the label is shown here, where it says the age entered is too high. And this will not let me submit my form. Okay. Once I enter a number that is, we'll say 19, that is going to meet both conditions. Nothing is shown, and I'm able to submit my record. Okay. So again, this solution or this recipe is going to give you a chance to keep your client validation while also including immediate feedback to the data collector that they made an error in the form. Okay. Moving on, we're going to take a look at TAC's recipe, and TAC found a way to clear a date element. For those of you who have been using IFormBuilder for a while, and if you've had any experience using either the date or the time element, once you select that date or time, there's no way to actually clear it. So what TAC found a solution to do was she used a select element to trigger the dynamic value of the date element and delete its value. Basically what that means is when the select element is toggled, whether it's chosen to be selected or deselected, the dynamic value of the date element will be updated, and the update that she has in her solution is to actually delete the value of the date element itself. So coming here into her solution, we'll see the date element is up here. Once I choose this and I select it and the date has been filled in, this element underneath is a select element, and if I press it, the date will disappear. Okay. Conversely, if this is already selected and the date element is filled in and I deselect this, the date will also be deleted. Underneath in the bottom half, it's the same functionality, except that instead of using a select element, we have a toggle element used, and it will do the same thing. When you press it on, it will remove the date. If you press it off, it will remove the date as well. So you effectively have a button that you can use to clear the date value in your form. Looking into Form Builder, for the date element, there's nothing special here, except for the dynamic value, where it says if unchecked date does not equal -1, delete date. For my select, we're going to start with a dynamic value of unchecked date equaling -1. And then basically when you select or when you press the select element, it will change that index to be selected or to be 0. At which point this dynamic value will be updated because this is true. It does not equal -1. And the command you're going to use is delete with a period followed by the data column name, date1, which is the data column name of the date element itself. Down here with the toggle, we have the exact same setup, except the data column name is date2. For my toggle, for my date's dynamic value, this will check for unchecked date1, which is going to be the data column name of this toggle. If this is equal to 1, meaning that it's selected, it will delete the value in date 2. Okay, and so this was actually a really cool solution to being able to clear a date element, which is something that I know I had trouble with before, being unable to do, and I've had a lot of people request the ability to do this. And when TAC came up with this solution, I definitely felt like I had to share it with everybody. Barrett, were there any questions about TAC's recipe, or actually anything that's come up?
Not that I haven't answered yet, but I think people really appreciated that one. Some folks have been using it for a while now, but others are really excited about it.
Good stuff. All right, so the last recipe I have for you all today is going to be Ben's recipe, and this is going to be a technique for checking for an empty text field. So when I say an empty text field, what I mean is a text field that has either no text in it, or also a text field that has only spaces in it. So there's no actual character data. It'll just be like you're pressing spacebar, you're pressing the space on your mobile device for that field. And so if a text field only has spaces, it should not be considered as being populated. The way we're going to do this is we're going to add a second element using the trim and the length methods in JavaScript for the dynamic value. And what this is going to do is it's going to give us a numeric representation of how much content or how many inputs are in that text field element.
So, John, we do have some other additional questions coming in for the previous recipe. Would you like me to hold off on those until you're done with Ben's, or would you like to go through that now?
I think we can just go ahead and go through it now. That's fine with me.
Okay, so one of the questions is, with that function, can you use that to recalculate elements tied to complex formulas that are not resetting when dependent fields are changed?
I don't
want me to repeat that?
No, I understand the question. I don't want to say yes with absolute certainty, only because I've never tried it personally. But the core mechanic of changing a dynamic value based on a condition should hold true. So I don't see any reason why, instead of saying, let me go back here to the form builder, instead of saying, delete the data column name, you could have something in here where you're running your complex function, and then with whatever parameters you're putting in here. There's no reason you wouldn't be able to do that as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll definitely have to check that out. That was a great question.
Yeah.
Another question with that, or comment from someone, is saying that they're still a little confused with it, this scenario. When is it that there's a need for this, to use this function? They are still relatively new to iForm Builder, so they're trying to figure out when they should push this into their forms.
Sure. Well, I can think of a scenario where, say you're doing an inspection and part of the form is for maybe like a follow-up appointment where you have to designate a date for that appointment, and you accidentally press the element. And so what would happen is, right, at this point, if I press this element by accident, there's no way to cancel out of it without giving it a value, right? I can't, like, if I press out here, it's not going to do it. Like, it'll exit out, but it will give you the value that it was selected with, right? So I can show you one more time. If I have it set up this way and I press out, it's going to update that field. So at this point, I don't actually want that field to be filled in. I don't want, in this case, a follow-up inspection. And so this would be a scenario where I would actually want to be able to clear that field to empty it, because I may also have integrations built into the submission of the record, where if that field is populated, it's going to trigger additional actions and additional steps. And so by accidentally pressing on this field, without that way of clearing it, there would be nothing I can do in terms of getting rid of this value. I hope that was a clear explanation. Barrett, would you have anything to add to that, or do you think that that answered their question.
No, I think that was great. And they say, thanks a lot.
Perfect. Okay. So, moving back to Ben's recipe again, I just want to briefly go over it one more time so that we just have it fresh in our minds. But again, the idea here is that if you have an empty text field, you're going to be looking at the number of characters that are not spaces within it to decide whether it is filled in or not. So here I have the form with just a text field and then a number field underneath. And this number field is going to be the number of characters that I have in this text field. So if I enter something here, I'll get a number of 3. But if I enter just a bunch of spaces, even though there's actually characters in that field, it's still going to read as a length of 0. Now the way this works is in this number field, my dynamic value is going to be the name of the text, the data column name of the text element, followed by the trim method or function, and then the length property. So let me go ahead and take this. I'm going to push this into my text editor so we can talk about this a little bit more. Basically, we have 3 pieces here. Right? Text field is going to be the element's data column name. The second part of this is the trim function. What the trim function does is it removes leading and trailing white space. So what that means is if there are spaces before the first character in my input, it will cut those out. If there's spaces after my last character, it will cut those out. What the trim function will not do is remove spaces in between characters. So imagine if you have a sentence, the trim function is not going to smush all those words together. The last part of this is the length property, and that is going to return the number of characters. So what would happen is if I had a string like the, which I had before, this gave me a length of 3. If I have a string like this, where I have the word the, but there are 1, 2, 3 leading white spaces, this would equal 6 if I only used text field dot length. If I use dot trim though, this will actually give me back to this, where I then want to use the entire piece, text field. I want to trim the white space, and then I want to be given the length of the string. And so that's how we're going to get this number of 3. If I had white space in the middle, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 characters. So this would return the number 11. If I trim this, it will not remove that one space in the middle though. And so I can show you this behavior. We go back over here, and I get rid of these spaces. And I enter this, and it gives me that text length of 11. If I add spaces after, that length will stay at 11. And then if we go back to the original scenario of just only white spaces, because there is no character in there, it effectively deletes all of that white space before taking the length calculation. And so that's why it maintains at a 0. Once I have that 0, I'm then able to make my conditional statements. So we can actually combine recipes at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and make a label here. Make it required. My condition value is that text length is greater than 0. I'm sorry, is equal to 0. And then for my label, I can say something like this. Please enter text in the text field. Let's go ahead and save this. And I will resync my device. To show you how this works. We'll choose Ben's recipe. And right now you see how the text length is set to 0. It says please enter text in the text field. If I enter characters in here, that validation message will be hidden. If I enter only white space, that text length stays at 0, meaning the text field is empty and that they need to enter text in the text field. So this is actually what I just showed you, a really nice way of taking these small little recipes and combining them to a more robust solution. Right. Barrett, were there any questions about Ben's recipe or any of the previous recipes that had come up during that?
Yes, there was. So this question is for this last one, and this individual said, we had an issue when an inspector used a long statement in a text area element, which stopped the form from uploading to the server. Could we use this to specify a limit of characters that would return an error message?
Yeah, you absolutely could. So instead of having my condition be that it's empty, my condition could be if this text length is greater than my maximum character limit. We'll say 9,000. Okay. So at this point, if the length of, if this number is greater than 9,000, meaning that there's more than 9,000 characters of text in here after trimming, then this label would show up, and then it would not allow you to submit the form.
And one individual asked, what's the difference between this scenario for this individual where they're trying to limit the characters for the error message to appear and adding a character limit in the attribute section for elements?
Sure. So well, not in the label. In the text element, you're able to specify the data size. And in terms of the previous question, I would say that the main difference here is that if it's causing issues with the syncing, then by setting this condition value, it will prevent you to even get to that point where you may have your sync timeout. So by setting this at a client level, you're going to prevent the sync from even being attempted. And so you would avoid that timing out issue.
And John, with this recipe or this form, would you mind just adding a text area? Because I actually don't think you can add a data size for this.
Oh,
so that's another reason. This scenario works really well for text areas because you can't define how many characters are placed within a text area.
Yeah, and so just to repeat or reiterate what Barrett had said, in my text element, I have this data size. However, in the text area, that is not a property available. So there is no way to limit the size of a text area in terms of characters through the element properties, meaning you would have to do it with the client validation. All right, Barrett, any other questions?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, hopefully if they have questions, they'll ask them very quickly because that was the last recipe I had for you all. I do want to go ahead and say, though, that, one of the things I really have enjoyed over this last year is not only working with, customers and helping address their needs, but working with the really talented people here at Zerion and having everyone share the knowledge that they have and the strategies and the techniques that they've developed on their own over time. I'm hoping that through these webinars into 2017, we can continue to do things like this, where we're sharing that knowledge that we have internally with customers externally, so that you all can become better form builders and gain better value out of using our services.
In addition to that, we love to have customers share their stories, and so if at any time you want to be a part of one of these webinars and actually present your solution, just contact either John or myself, and we are more than happy to set your stage.
Yep. So, Barrett, did any other questions come in?
Nope, just people saying thank you and that they appreciate it.
I appreciate them. I appreciate the opportunity to share these solutions with you. I want to thank the members on the professional services team for taking their time to prepare and give me these recipes to share with you all. And so if there's no other questions, then I guess we'll go ahead and close out this webinar. I wish everybody a happy rest of the year, a happy new year, a safe holiday season, and we will speak to you all soon in 2017 with Tony's webinar that is on the 12th, if I'm not mistaken. We can check real quick. Yes, on the 12th. Okay. All right, everybody.
And just to reiterate, go ahead. I was just going to say happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so have a good rest of the day, everybody, and take care.